Uh, so I'm not even really going to bother with intros for things because usually when people hear an intro, they think that an ad's coming, and I'm never going to monetize this. This is more just me adding into the collective unconscious at this point. Use this to drift off if you want, uh, taking a little siesta or fully hitting the hay. You can, I guess, get a look at a weird liminal space imagery with just this hat hanging behind me on the wall. Or just, yeah, don't watch the video at all. That's always an option. But uh, as the title states, I want to make this video, especially in the wake of the No Kings protests and just the way people have been reacting to the U.S., Israeli, and EU, Australia, Canada. Hell, even Spain is sending ships in now. War of aggression against the people of Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Palestine, occupied Palestine. Israel is not an actual country. It's just a settler colonial project that's been running for, I would say, 110 years, roughly. It's got to go. Speaking of another settler colonial project that's going, that's tied into all of this, the us in Usreal is, if anyone just has any lingering, dying hopes that the dying empire is gonna rise like a phoenix from the ashes to keep getting you your tendies, just I'm here to let you know that it's over. The U.S. empire is predicated on uh, having hegemony with its military in order to establish comprador governments, lick-spittle governments, and if they can't do that, just outright destroy a country and then have multinationals swoop in with private security companies and just scoop up the resources with essentially slave labor. So that's really what the U.S. represents, and it's that model is done because that model was predicated on really the US being the only country that got out of World War II relatively unscathed. Yeah, I'm including theaters of warfare in Africa and South Asia, Southeast Asia as well, and in Palestine, in occupied Palestine as well. Um, these were all battles that were taking place all over the world in World War II. And actually, I believe that the most people in the war died in China. They were facing, honestly, they were fighting the longest against the Japanese, who have had a lot of their worst war crimes getting weirdly cleaned up for some reason. Is sanitized is a better word, I guess. Not sanitized, just like what Western media, at least within the U.S., tends to do. It's just lie by omission, just not say anything at all. But with everything that's going on, of the U.S. just getting fully exposed, even to like kind of relatively basic people who would maybe even call themselves like apolitical, or they just don't care about politics that much, vaguely like a liberal would a self-identifying liberal in a capitalist country, even they're waking up to just be like, yeah, this whole thing, this house of cards is tumbling down at this point, at a rapid rate. If everything goes through in terms of the US actually getting booted from the region, I honestly don't really fully know exactly what's going to come out of this. If the U.S. is banned from trade on the Strait of Hormuz, along with the absolutely insane tariff regimen that it is actually slackening sanctions on Russia, and they were trying. He's so cooked. The the dictator. I mean, he's an authoritarian dictator. Let's not lie and pretend like people in the U.S. live in a democracy. So if anyone from abroad is watching this, the U.S. isn't a democratic country, and yeah, people here are, I would say, probably the most ignorant in the world overall because we are insanely propagandized. That's not an excuse. It's more just have to acknowledge that that is what happens. And it takes people are just breaking through the programming now way too late because they're hysterical and, pressure is making diamonds in terms of them saying that they do want to do away with the government. But and this is where, when I was bringing up the No Kings protest from before, this is what I was kind of referring to, where um there's no, people don't like the uh, neoliberal government that they have to live under, but they do not they cannot conceive of an alternative outside the machine. And people are just, they understand that they cannot break free of the contradiction staring them in the face of, they understand that this country, by the way, this country is the director. Don't try to wander or any sort of accountability off of the US government of, oh, this place used to be great, but we're getting led around by the balls by Pisreal. And it's just, no, that's, don't try to create this narrative where the US actually had redeeming qualities at any point. People need to be taking this experience and fully running with it and understanding that the existence of the United States of America is nothing but a litany of unspeakable crimes that are, that have been sanitized. I guess I love that word, but sanitization of previous atrocities to incorporate them into a national myth. And that myth has been based on the same thing that Pisraelis do, is stealing land from people that are already here because you deem them as not productive enough with it, aka you're not extracting profit from it because they just wanted to live in harmony with it. But all people that were coming to the US, it was either out of, well, it was three things, and this is me paraphrasing Matt Chrisman from um, the, I believe, Hell on Earth podcast miniseries with Chapo Trap House, where he said, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't the, he did Hell on Earth, but this was the I think it was called the Hall of Presidents podcast, where he said the three main things that drove people to immigrate to the U.S., like that, especially that initial like white immigration, I would say up to the like area around the Gilded Age, at the beginning of the 20th century. The three main things that were bringing the initial run of colonists to the U.S. were greed, desperation, and fanaticism in terms of religion. And well, it just so happened that those things combined to create the capitalism taken to its absolute extreme breaking point, which is where we're at. Happy 250th this year, bitches. This place is an economic zone of interest with, like I said, people that are just completely numbed, completely just raked over the coals by a system that has atomized the population, destroyed any sort of public space, destroyed the ability to even have any sort of tangible labor union organizing. I mean, labor unions in the U.S., especially in the post World War II period, basically just existed to feed enough treats to workers in the insanely prosperous post war period while still maintaining increasing profits for capitalists. But once the rest of the world, particularly Germany and Japan, initially started catching up because of U.S. Investment in those former Axis countries post World War II. The U.S. basically bought them and turned West Germany and all of Japan into a military outpost for a while. You'll as you read more about U.S. history, you'll find that it does that a lot. It pretty much has turned the entire world into a military outpost, and finally, it's curtains. It's curtains on all of the blights around the globe. The problem is that the absolute psychopathy on display is causing the climate crisis that has been bearing down on us since we were starting to. I mean, wasn't it as early as like the 1990s when we were doing simulations in earnest, talking about the climate, and it's now like 35 ish. Well, we'll say yeah, we'll say 30 years. We've really known for 30 years, and everything is just they have decided to just cash out by trying to jump on resources. Now by they, I'm talking about the global capitalist class. It is the capitalist class, for I guess ease of bringing new people in that might not be as left thinking as some people are in the U.S. Um, they're the Epstein class as well, and it's they are just deciding, okay, well, there's a conspiracy. Well, I don't actually think conspiracy is the right word, but the Epstein class, there was a journalist, Richard Medhurst. I respect the hell out of his work. I think he's great. And he basically established that losing this war potentially for the U.S. and uh, annihilating the Gulf oil trade with the Strait of Hormuz getting choked off, that will, and this is also in tandem with somehow the Nord Stream pipeline blew up. That has forced Europe into an energy crisis that has made it completely dependent on the United States. The love is basically gone, as it should be at this point. I mean, the U.S. is just a slobbering psychopath at this point. And as someone that's trying to organize against the occupation that the U.S. is doing all over the globe, including its own borders, massively. It needs to, the 250th year needs to be like, hey, this thing needs to go into a coma, and then we can go boop boop, just flatline it, because this is just not a sustainable place that can exist reasonably in the world anymore. And I want to tie it back to the No Kings protest, because, and this is, and can you really even blame people? Yeah, there were over 10 million people at the protests, is my understanding. Which is awesome. You should just get out there, see if you meet some like-minded people that are at least amenable to uh, being pushed more in a direction where there might actually be some change within the US. And people need to stop thinking that, and the No Kings protests themselves, they're good places to potentially bring people more into a meaningful cause. But the No Kings protests themselves, they're just a nothing burger. There's no substance. There's no political demands. There's no economic demands. I mean, people are just saying free Palestine and no kings. That was the Revolutionary War. Just stop. The slogan needs to be no billionaires. The slogan needs to be off with the heads of the Epstein class, down with the capitalist imperialists that are bombing schoolgirls and starving babies in Palestine, in occupied Palestine. And just now in West Bank, settlers are just straight up murdering people. The Israeli parliament, the Knesset, just passed a law today saying that they're allowed to enact the death penalty on Palestinians. Like, this is what the United States supports. This country that has just butchered hundreds of thousands of innocent Palestinians. Uh, at this point, since 2023, tens of thousands of Lebanese, tens of thousands of Syrians in a dirty war that's been going on there since the Obama days. And hey, guess what, CIA? Guess what, Mossad? You got your regime change with Al Jawani, a freaking Al Qaeda offshoot. So read in between the lines. CIA asset. Just now, he's the head of the country, and oh, look, sectarian violence against Alawite Christians that are there. Um, who could have seen this going wrong? And everything that the U.S. has been doing with Venezuela. Don't forget about Venezuela. Don't forget that the U.S. kidnapped their president, and he's just in New York. He's just in Manhattan somewhere. He's just hanging. Well, not hanging. I fucking hope not, in the sense that I was thinking, but he's just chilling here. It's insane that this country's aggression is going to be paid a million times over. And what No Kings protests need to be demanding, in order for, it's not even just worrying about false flags anymore. It's the world defending itself against U.S. aggression. If someone were to launch an ICBM at this point, I mean, do people really understand what the horrors that the U.S. is committing? People are waking up finally. It's a shame that it's come to this, but it will be a failure if we do not take this moment to, in the name of the Palestinians, the Iranians, everyone in West Asia that's been getting butchered, everyone that has been getting butchered by the RSF in Sudan, while the U.S. has withheld. The Sudanese government was requesting 9 billion from the U.S. 9 billion. And guess what? The U.S. just was casually asking for 200 billion against Iran. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, dude, you couldn't end that famine genocide that's going on there. And oh, hey, we need to make sure that we're continuing to fund armed militias. I believe it's M23 is the main one that's being supplied by the U.S. through Uganda and Rwanda. Nigeria is going to be occupied by Western military bases, and it seems like the U.S., UK, France, Western Europe, they're kind of, especially since the U.S. has them by the balls in terms of energy. Um, they're kind of like, if we don't lend at least nominal support to show that we're on uh, Daddy Bibi and Daddy Trump's side, then we're not going to be able to maintain our good standing within the U.S. good graces. That I guess they just don't full, and they kind of have to. That's the thing, is the U.S. has basically engineered a situation where they are the sole supplier of natural gas to Europe, and the Ukraine Russia situation has only deepened dependence on the United States. Not to mention the U.S.'s military contractors have made a killing off that war, and it's also been a testing ground for new weapons. But uh, we can see that the U.S. productive capacity is getting exposed. And I'm kind of going off on these material tangents that go away from the No Kings protest, because it really just heightens it exacerbates, if you will, the hollowness of the No Kings protests that are just not, they're just saying, get rid of the king. Come on, like, you understand that this man is the embodiment, or the, not the embodiment, but a representative at least of a portion of an entire group of people known as capitalists. So he is a member of that class, and deliberately just profiteering, him and his family, his friends are profiteering deliberately off of insider trading, as he's announcing, oh, I'm going to stop the war for 5 days, basically to let stock markets calm down to head into the weekend. Then he's probably talking with people that are in the private sector, working for multinational corporations, that uh, he's letting them know, okay, these are probably like some things you should expect with the military strategy. But maybe not going too far in depth, although he's a fucking moron, so that wouldn't surprise me. But probably letting them know, hey, make sure you bet on these futures or something like that. But let me try to get back a little bit more into the main thrust of what I wanted to talk about with the No Kings protests. Is they're not talking about the complexity of this situation, how this oil shock is going to reverberate throughout the US economy to potentially tip us into that recession that has just been waiting with bated breath, in earnest since COVID. I mean, we have had rising housing prices, uh, student loan forgiveness canceled, increasing denial of insurance claims, and just in general healthcare neglect occurring throughout the U.S. economy. This was during the Biden administration as well. And that I shouldn't even have to say that as well. There is and this is the problem with the No Kings protests, is that they can't say anything of substance because the supposed opposition party in the United States to the regime uh, is part of the regime. They serve the function of fascism by essentially being the persistent losers in moments that matter, that allow fascists to take over and be able to implement coercive measures of control, authoritarianism, and just brutality, leveraging brutality and terrorism to extract more surplus value from hapless workers. And then the Democrats come in and they're just the hapless losers. Even though we have majorities in and apparently a liberal majority on the court at certain points. During Obama, I believe we had a super majority in all those facets, and he's known as the drone strike king. And he won a Nobel Peace Prize for expanding the war in Afghanistan. Say what I'm trying to say, even going back with that too, is that, and this is something that people were probably in alignment with at the No Kings protests more than actually putting tangible steps forward towards doing away with what they're calling the regime, is they're just thinking that voting Democrats in is going to fix things. Even though, if you look at a lot of the Democrats that are coming in, they're selling themselves as progressives, and they're still tied to the Israel lobby. I mean, they're like, some of them are like 1 or 2 degrees removed, but they're not even like trying to hide it, because they know that if people adhere to the same two-party duopoly of just fascism at this point, you're not going to get any changes. Like, this is the thing of people. First of all, 100% blame the 77 million Trump voters. I don't even know if all of those were real. I mean, based on voting machines that have been rigged in previous elections. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Elon Musk publicly admitted to rigging voting machines in Georgia, which is just, I don't know why you're proud of that. He must have just been off of some special K at that point. But it's not, whoever your 77 million are there, you're just a moron. Like, you're just an absolute, just, you're, I'm surprised you're not drooling on yourself. You just gotta be kind of curious and slightly literate about the world to have not voted for this absolute charlatan. I mean, charlatan is the absolute kind. Voted for this yeah, child, uh I'm probably gonna say child rapist, uh child unaliver, PDF file, all the stupid censorship that we have to say on YouTube. That guy, that was, if anyone that was just remotely paying attention and knew anything about this guy's life, he was the ultimate sleaze bag. And he had already had the John Doe case down at Epstein's Manor in Florida, and people dismissed that. And they would vote for him again. They're just mad that, oh, the oil crisis is personally impacting me. But we're not talking about the 77 million. It's the people that are saying that anyone that didn't want to vote for Kamala Harris for president is also part of the problem and potentially worse. Yeah, first off, do away with the last part. That's just absolutely moronic analysis to say that someone not voting for genocide and um, not voting for economic degradation, not voting for the other pro Israeli candidate, the other candidate that was saying in speeches that we need to make the US military the most lethal military in the world. The person that was running political cover for the initial genocide that was going on in Gaza. I mean, that's not the initial genocide in Gaza, but when things really kicked off, do people not understand that the entire focal point of the gears and levers of the world moved to Gaza after the US and Western leaders and Western supporting leaders lickspittle comprador governments along with Western leaders, they unleashed hell. They're still unleashing hell. No one really believed that the ceasefire was a thing. Israelis don't know how to tell the truth, but um, this hell, and the actually in the scheme of it, potentially the worst of the damage of the genocide in Palestine that was the focal point for all of the regional instability that's going on. A full fledged supporter for Israel. And do you think that if Israel wanted to attack Iran, that after letting them run like wild dogs, still letting them do that? Democrats are barely saying shit about it in Congress. They don't care. They're Zionists. Israel is a U.S. colonial project, formerly British, but the U.S. took it over once the U.S. was for the only Western imperialist capitalist nation that was left intact for the most part. Well, yeah, no, pretty much intact. It didn't really lose that much. It gained a ton in World War II, actually. World War II saved the U.S. capitalist economy and made it, a, just by process of elimination, the superpower. It's not a badge of honor, so don't think that I'm flexing by saying that. There's nothing to flex about being a U.S. citizen. Are you kidding me? No. But people, and it's the types of people that do go to No Kings protests. Some people, like I said, they're a good place to go to network and connect with people. But they're saying that they've just boiled down Kamala Harris's entire terrible, just dog shit presidential campaign. It seemed like she could barely even be bothered to actually legitimately combat Donald Trump. She was running off to international real estate conferences, probably going to be looking to purchase beachside property in Gaza, because she's definitely that kind of person. And anyone that said that you're just as worse as a Trump supporter for not voting for her, you're not looking at the fact that she literally ran political cover for the genocide, and one of her main projects was ensuring that the peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia would collapse to keep the perpetual war going there. She's a warmonger. She definitely, if Israel somehow, I don't know, they bribed her with the right bottle, like right marca vino for. She could give her a little bit of that. Um, if she's feeling a little zesty, just buy her some Xanax. She's probably off that stuff. By the way, I'm uh, you might think I'm just disparaging her character, but this is a woman that did not prosecute Steve Mnuchin for illegally foreclosing on homes in California. She jailed parents for truancy. And like I said, she helped politically cover a genocide in the charnel house in Ukraine. She is an absolute witch and a tyrant. And it's kind of disgusting that people just want to pretend like she was actually an option where everything wouldn't go to hell. Things were not going well under Biden, and a world historic genocide, and nobody in Congress doing anything about it. Democrats have been supplying money to Israel. They're in lockstep with Israel. Anyone that's in Congress is a Zionist. Just get that out of your head. And it doesn't matter which party, they are in agreement on the settler colonial project there. They're also literally in agreement on pretty much everything else, because if you look at their top 8 donors, it's essentially weirdly more big tech and the military. Like military contractors are with Democrats, and then with Republicans, it's usually more like PE firms and real estate conglomerates, those types of real like rapacious vulture capitalists. And then Democrats are, interestingly, the war hawks. Which they are. Democrats are very bloodthirsty. They have been supporting the CIA, Mossad operations, just murdering Iranian policemen and killing, helping murder tens of thousands of Iranians even before this current war started. And the U.S., with the CIA is a bipartisan U.S. project that a lot of Democratic Congress people, maybe I shouldn't say a lot, but probably more than they're publicly disclosing, they are literally just self proclaimed CIA officers. Anyone that's ever been in that organization or any law enforcement organization, you're a global terrorist and a domestic terrorist. Absolutely unacceptable that people like that were saying that this is a legitimate counter to the people in West Asia, the Pisraelis that are pushing humanity to its breaking point. We're saying that the intelligence agency that is basically part and parcel with their existence, because CIA and Mossad closely work on everything. Also, don't forget about MI6. Shout out to the god awful Brits for intelligence gathering still. But let's not let anybody off the hook in order to genuinely build a new world here. But this absolutely needed to be said, because voting for Democrats and thinking that Kamala Harris was going to be something different will solve nothing. In order to make it through the filtration mechanism of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, you have to be enough of a piece of shit to say, yeah, I support multinational corporations, international finance capital, the military, the prison industrial complex, and I support Moloch and Ball. I don't want to. That's another thing. Don't go into like retreat into demonology or mysticism or any sort of non-material philosophy to get away from the admittedly pretty crap reality that um, or crap for 99.9 repeating several times reality that most of us are being subjected to right now. But voting for someone that is literally in lockstep with Israel, an entire party, and its institutional donors that are in lockstep with Israel, you got to abandon the party. And the solution to keep it productive is you need to organize with a legitimate alternative, meet people in the Green Party, and then maybe get some candidates in there that are legitimately going to be bucking the trend. Because a message needs to be sent that if Democrats don't legitimately try to stop World War III, do not if they don't say that Israel needs to no longer exist as a state, if they don't say ICE should no longer exist, and frankly, with their complicity in domestic terrorism, no U.S. Cops should exist, and we need to think our entire framework of how security is provided to communities. It's not with guns, it's with social services and basic infrastructure and access to food and water and basic utilities. Those are things that bring security. Uh, but people are too narrow-minded, and they take security in the most you know narrow-minded approach possible of inflicting hurt on other people, and primarily innocent people, because most people in this world, I like to think, are innocent, and we're just trapped in the thrall of capitalist realism. But we really can break free of that at this point. And it's not just enough to run candidates. You get what I'm saying? That this is just a way for flexing people's political muscles to recognize that, oh, the Democrats actually are just as genocidal as Republicans, and actually don't even have that many protections for marginalized communities. They're just they're blue fascists instead of red fascists. And once people realize that, and don't just say that anyone who didn't vote is potentially even worse, you need to accept that you're not living in a democracy. Stop trying to make it seem like there's any sort of electoral avenue that can be reasonably taken with the state of things in the United States. The United States it has domestic terrorists running around, kidnapping and murdering people. Its infrastructure is totally shot. There are mass layoffs, particularly in logistics industries, because of the rising oil prices. The housing bubble is going to burst. This war is causing a climate crisis because the U.S. and Israel are just hitting civilian infrastructure like oil refineries. I mean, this is just a disaster of existential proportions, and people are just like, well, I voted for the black woman. Oh, so okay, so what? You did your part. That the person who ultimately would have capitulated and was actually capitulating to Israel. I was talking to someone, and they legitimately forgot that the Democrats were doing the genocide initially. Like, do you really think that you just phased that out of your memory? And they were just like, oh, someone's been drinking the Fox News Kool-Aid. You've been drinking, I don't even know, some sort of amnesiac potion of epic proportions if you forgot. Well, after the Pisraelis were shooting themselves and blaming Hamas on October 7th, 2023, what happened after that? And this was during the Biden administration. What happened after that, guys? Was it a genocide? And then someone tried to come back to me and say, well, the difference is Trump is profiting personally off of the genocide. The Democrats weren't. One, they were. You're an idiot for saying that unverified lie. And two, they were. So there's morality to doing a genocide now. That's we're doing uh lesser evilism on genocide. Okay. You have to understand at that point that liberalism is just totally fried, and you legitimately need to move on to Marxism, Leninism at this point, because this is we can't pretend that things are ever going to go back to a the smoothed over state of affairs in the United States that were the wheels of empire being greased off of the natural resources stolen from the rest of the world is over. The US is going to have people in the US are going to be facing struggles that people everywhere else in the world have been facing for uh sometimes over a century of US hegemony. So it's a taste of this country. The country's getting a taste of its own medicine, is what I'm trying to say. But if you live in the US, it's not about being doom and gloom. It's about like being productive, and you need to connect with people that are associated with organizations like the Green Party, like DSA. There's a reform wing. I think it's called UAWD. That is I believe they have someone that's running for president of the UAW that could do something. But I know with labor unions being job dependent and jobs just kind of getting tossed out left and right, even though companies are doing it erroneously because AI is not able to replace people, nor should it. It's just they're being cheap, and their logic is they were hoping AI would be able to replace people to maintain their astronomical profit margins. I mean, we're at a point now where it's just completely inadequate saying we're voting for Democrats at the midterm. They are funding ICE. They're funding the Pisraeli genocide. That is just not going to cut it at all anymore. We need to do better. We need to think bigger. We need to think beyond the current world order that is predicated on just kind of letting the U.S. do what it wants, and its capitalist lick spittles eat well enough to throw us enough scraps and wages to kind of keep the dinner table going while just absolutely massacring millions of people all over the world. Don't forget about that. And Democrats and Republicans have been a part of that for decades. This isn't anything new, but to deny it when literally both parties have fervently participated in this genocide of the Palestinian people, just the latest in a series of genocides against them. It just goes to show that there is just they serve two different functions of fascism. One implements it, the other pretends like it's fighting against it. That's what they do. And the only way that people are going to break free of this essentially learned helplessness, this petty bourgeois, just, oh, if the institutions don't work, then it's just busted. No, it means that we're just going to have to organize outside of the institution of the Democratic Party to exercise any sort of political will if you want to in electoral politics. But if you don't electoral politics, plenty of work to do in local communities and libraries. Those are great places to volunteer. Soup kitchens. Shoot, I mean, Goodwill, I guess, if you want. It's kind of a shame that a lot of stuff is sort of associated with private religious charities. Uh, kind of wish there were more public spaces, but I've been donating to Palestinian families that I've been able to identify through um, communist content creators. So there are ways that we can fight back in our little ways of getting to know one another and getting to support one another and understand that it's not just looking through cameras. We can look one another in the eye and say, this can't go on for the sake of humanity. And voting for Kamala and Democrats is just so inadequate for a moment that people both within and but within the U.S. are being murdered and terrorized. Not just Alex Preddy and Renee Good, but also um, a Venezuelan man, um, a black man, I believe. I am sorry that I'm blanking on the names with that. Let me look it up just super quick here. Uh, Victims of ICE. It was the name that I was thinking of. Yeah, Alex Preddy and Good. Keith Porter Jr. is who I was thinking of. Jesus. 32 people have died in 2025 in ICE custody, and Keith Porter Jr. was the black man that was killed. Um, and then a Honduran immigrant, Luis Gustavo Nunez Caceres, died in Conroe, Texas, outside of Houston. So that's the American values that the Epstein class um, wants you to uphold. And what are some other things that need to be done as an act of resistance? If you have any tenant unions around you, it'd be great to organize with them outside the volunteering and political activism that I was mentioning. Uh, and regarding the political activism with like Greens and DSA, it's more just good to be able to, like I said, for the No Kings protest, meet like minded people, but you're also able to start flexing your brain on basic organizing tactics, just learning how to cooperate with other people on a fundamental level is going to be very important in the days to come as we're breaking away from the uh, two-party chokehold kind of just bourgeois capitalist drip feed that they've got us on, but they're running out of gerbil food. They can't keep us coming back to the pump over and over again. Well, good analogy in the case of gas because it's drying up. Not in terms of reserves. Honestly, we'll probably poison ourselves with smog and acid rain before the reserves are plundered completely. If we don't stop that, but um, yeah, it's just apologies for losing my train of thought there. It's a little hard to wrap your mind around fully at this point, just the extent of crises that we're going to have to surmount with that, with an energy crisis, with a climate crisis, oil crisis, AI crisis. Don't forget about the great AI bubble. That's coming too, and World War III, that's been happening on a low scale before Iran. Um, I would say that the war on terror has really been, I mean, shoot, you could call it Cold War, World War III. 2 million people were killed in Vietnam alone, 1 million people in Korea in 3 years. I mean, it's not really a Cold War. Those are two genocides right there. The atomic bombs that the U.S. launched alone, those were each a genocide. Um, and military experts during that time in the U.S., respected admirals and generals, they knew that the Japanese were going to lose, and they did not have plans to invade. The false narrative here that, oh, the U.S. had to commit genocide because its own boys would have gotten hurt. And it's just like, no, you just murdered a bunch of civilians, and you should be absolutely disgusted with yourself. But no, snuff films were a thing. And that's why I'm not really big on like the greatest generation either. Like, stop that. Like, this country's existence is a crime, and people need to get over that. But yeah, I guess in terms of lending support to people, I've given some productive methods there, some volunteering efforts, but one thing that is going to be important, and I feel like I've kind of been trying to arrive at this point, but my brain's been sputtering. I'm a little tired. Is we're at a point where the draft might come back, and you have a fundamental duty to humanity, and this includes anyone that is a part of law enforcement as well as the military. You have a duty to humanity to resist your service, to resist your fascist government, and frankly, to, since you're a part of the machine, do something, do something about what's going on within the machine. People that are in the military and law enforcement, if you can't do anything to meaningfully sabotage from within, you have a duty to humanity to not turn your guns on all of the innocent people around the world, the probably like around 100 million people that the U.S. empire has just butchered. This is including sanction regimes, along with actual conflict, because economic sanctions is considered an act of warfare as well. There is just nothing that can be done to save the United States, because it was always uh, just a destructive, genocidal, exploitative entity from its very inception. Uh, Exploitative to the point that it leveraged chattel slavery, slave labor, and still maintain that essentially with penal slavery. The U.S. has like the largest documented slave population in the world in its prison system. This is, you know, not barring the other tens of millions, maybe even a few 100 million Americans that are basically kept in debt peonage via wage slavery, and dwelling in ignorance because the media has just lied by omission about anything that's going on in this war. Nobody knows what the hell is going on, and that's why people are trying to pretend like everything's going to be okay here if you just vote for Democrats, and if you don't, then it's all your fault, everything falls apart. You're naive. You're just as naive as no, I'll give you a step above a Trump person. I mean, the Trump people are actually just uh Jesus Christ, like you're just so dumb. I'm sorry, but it's got to be said. But if you're someone that is thinking that Democrats that were committing genocide, that have been building up the police state, are actually your friends. Governor Walz in Minnesota was saying that he was looking forward to what was it, Tom Homan, or the new ICE person that was coming in to Minneapolis, just selling out his state, saying like, I'm looking forward to like a real professional coming in. Yeah, old Tommy Boy was caught up in I believe it was an FBI sting where he was caught like stealing $10,000 or something. Yeah, real professional. Yeah, it's like, yeah, the other guy was like a Nazi with a Napoleon complex, or Greg Brovino, but there are plenty of other just Nazis without Napoleon complexes, like Tom Homan. I'm just gonna call him Homan because it sounds right. And the Democratic governor of Minnesota was saying he was looking forward to working with him. Uh, Literally said at one point, they'll be able to do it more professionally, like at night, not bothering people. And it's just like, oh, so you just want quiet fascism? That's what Democrats want. That this is someone that was pretty high up people's Democratic charts. And Bernie Sanders is a Zionist. AOC voted to fund Iron Dome. That's a weapon that allows the Israeli illegal occupation of Palestinian lands to continue. There's no hope from those people, and you need to volunteer at places like I mentioned, and you need to vote third party if you vote. But honestly, in the grand scheme of things, this system isn't really going to be fixed through voting, but it is good to show people that the Democratic Party needs to lose purchase. Absolutely. So you should vote for that reason. And then most importantly, regardless of what happens to the economy, do not join the military, do not join law enforcement, don't be a prison guard, don't join any sort of private security. I mean, it just cannot be emphasized enough that yes, we are living in a bombed out industrial husk in the United States, uh, of the finally, mercifully for the rest of the world, declining empire. But you absolutely need to resist any sort of military service that they might try to force you into. And you cannot just say, I needed the money, when trying to go for a law enforcement job or whatever just to make ends meet. We're just going to have to find a way. And you can't do it by selling your soul, because there is going to be retribution for that. Not talking about afterlife crap. I'm talking about from the people in this life. I'm saying this for your own good. Um, so yeah, please keep that in mind. And also, don't do things to just go along to get along. Like, don't stand like for the national anthem. Don't do anything like, oh, rah rah patriotic for the 4th of July. Break that internal programming that's been inculcated in us since we were real little, as kids, needing to stand up for the pledge, singing all these pro America songs in school. Like, that's programming, and you need to break from it, and you don't need to participate in things like that anymore, because everyone has seen that the US is just a total sham. All that stuff was lies, and everyone knows the joke that it is now. uh, you need to resist all aspects of US culture, along with not signing up for the death machine, and along with meeting people on a basis outside of manufactured US patriotism and consent for empire. Break free of that and meet people on an individual basis, talk about your problems, and then in a democratic, genuinely democratic voting structure, you arrive after public debate a path forward that everybody ultimately ends up agreeing on, working in concert, even if you have some disagreements with people, maybe even on a personal level. The work can override that, especially democratic work and solidarity. And that's just what we're going to need. Keep donating to whatever you can to support Cuba, especially, as well as Palestine. Literally, just if there's any way you can figure out to get liquidity into Cuba, before the US dollar just completely collapses, throw that in there. Like, this blockade of Cuba is also genocidal in nature, and they're trying to keep it hush hush, but Cuba and Palestine are completely interlinked in their national liberation and human rights struggles. Same with Iran, same with Lebanon, Yemen, Syria. Well, Syria unfortunately had its government toppled, but um, Iraqis are resisting. U.S. bases are getting attacked there. Pakistanis were getting violent against the U.S. embassy, and U.S. Marines ended up killing 6 people. They don't talk about that in the news. And Pakistan's a U.S. ally. Speaking of which, they're at war with Afghanistan, or Afghanistan. I'm sorry for butchering the pronunciations. But yeah, all of these things are going on. This is going to be a long video because there's a lot to cover. And just saying that, a Democrat, uh, voting them in the midterms. And if only we voted for Kamala, none of this would have happened. No, that is a short sighted material analysis and laundering responsibility for the crimes of this country and its public and private institutions that have profiteered off of genocide, slavery, and mass labor exploitation. It's just not good enough. And it's not good enough for the rest of the world. It's not good enough for the um, children being bombed in Iran and starved to death in Gaza, or um, dying of hypothermia during the winter there right now. Solidarity with all the oppressed people of the world. Um, Communism must win against the global Epstein capitalist class. And remember that you cannot say that you are someone that is decent and resisting Western hegemony and Western genocide while signing up for its institutions. You can't join the military, can't join law enforcement, can't join the prison industrial complex, probably can't really join uh, a lot of aspects of the US government outside of some social service functions. And we need to organize with one another, do it through the vehicles of DSA, Green Party, volunteering at libraries, soup kitchens. Um, those are the two that I think of. I said Goodwill too. I I guess if you have a good relationship with a church, you could do it through them also. I just feel like kind of like more, I don't know. It seems like kind of the small secular groups are the ones that tend to have the most tangible impact. But there are small localized church groups that do good work as well. But yeah, I've been talking for a while. We need to think big, go beyond Democrats, because things are going to get dicey in the U.S. War might even come to our shores at this point. People are certainly talking about false flags, and we need to be ready for anything. And we need to, for our own sakes and for the sake of the rest of the world, we really need to fight back against the regime, politically, economically, physically, if need be, because as the No Kings protest showed, it's just aimless. And I know people are kind of waiting for uh, that first brick to get thrown, and it'll happen eventually. But when that does happen, um, and you could be the one throwing the brick after meditative thought potentially. But uh, when stuff starts going down, rather than just thinking we'll spontaneously rise to the challenge, we need to get organized now. So I also brought up UAWD. That's a reform movement in the UAW labor union. I also brought up tenant unions. I do want to try and keep this productive. Don't fall into doomerism. I know that these are hysterical times, and it can cause us to fall into doomerism and kind of neglect performing effective material analysis. But we need to keep our heads during this, or we're gonna fail. So um, hopefully there was some, maybe not educational value, maybe not even entertainment value, but some sort of takeaway from this that will help other people. So solidarity, workers of the world unite. Thank you for listening.